For many, their doom was sealed. It looked really bad because it was. Volunteers, usually young folks, flocked to save what creatures they could, with the skill of their hands and the warmth of their hearts. Legions of cleanup crews hit the beaches to try to get rid of as much of the toxic sludge and contaminated seaweed and more. Cleaning up beaches, moving mountains of contaminated sand. But the Santa Barbara oil spill of 1969 wasn't just a Band-Aid kind of pit stop event. It wasn't just about photo ops and press conferences for government officials and community activists to sound off before the country turned its attention elsewhere. Recently sworn in, President Richard M. Nixon, bogged down in the middle of a horrendous, catastrophic, stalemated, and even losing war in Vietnam, saw a political opportunity in 1969 and visited Santa Barbara. In a bit of what turns out to be an understatement, he stated, quote, "The Santa Barbara spill touched the conscience of the American people." It's not likely he was referring to the people that ran the major oil companies or their stockholders. Oh, it touched the conscience of people, all right, especially locals and youngsters, who could divert their attentions a little bit from protesting about Vietnam and protesting over civil rights issues. And back then, what were ever-emerging women's rights issues. Ironically, a female oil worker for Exxon. Wow. The event that touched the conscience of a nation actually shocked the conscience of the entire world, beginning with the Santa Barbara Declaration of Environmental Rights, a seminal document in the beginning of the growth of the environmental movement. The January 28th event set off a Declaration of Environmental Rights, first of its kind, obviously mirroring the United States' very own Declaration of Independence. Note that environmental rights are not enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, nor in the Noble Declaration. Earth First, Greenpeace, you know the rest. Environmental Protection Agency, Sierra Club had new legs, and on and on. California federal congresspeople, Senator Alan Cranston of California, Democrat, and Congressman Charles Contigue, Republican. Prospects for environmental action in Congress. A bipartisan beginning to a bipartisan solution to a major world problem. The Congress passed the National Environmental Policy Act, the first major piece of national legislation in the world to begin to try and protect the environment from the ravages often invoked by private land users and corporations. It was only the beginning of what touched the conscience of the nation. The California Environmental Quality Act, followed by the Marine Mammal Protection Act, the still hotly debated Fire Button Endangered Species Act, and the bane of many in the Republican Party today, the Environmental Protection Agency. Don't just think about them in terms of what you see in Ghostbusters. But this is not to say that everything was happily ever after those founding laws and this massive event that touched the conscience of the world. Sad to say, the Santa Barbara 1969 spill ranks as the third largest. Not to say that we wanted it to be the first, but it would have been better because we're talking 80 to 100,000 barrels versus massive amounts more. The 1989 Exxon Valdez tanker crash is number one, with the Deepwater Horizon blowout in the Gulf of Mexico being number two. Pretty dubious distinctions. But the Deepwater Horizon of 2010 still wasn't the end of it all. May 19th, 2015, it happened again off the Santa Barbara coast with the Refugio Beach oil spill. The spill was more limited, only 3,400 barrels of oil, and cleanup methods, personnel, techniques were much improved since 1969. It's a bittersweet thing that we have to have an oiled bird care and education center here trying to save the life of an oil-soaked pelican victim of the Refugio spill. It's great to have oil spill response vessels as this. But it belies the bigger question now, doesn't it? Sooner or later, they do happen, and when they happen, it's not a good thing. Are we to give up some of our oil supply drilling prospects in order for greater environmental safety? Well, the debate goes on, crossing swords, as it were. Do we wait until the platforms become unproductive so they can be decommissioned and dismantled? Or do we pull the plug sooner, favoring fish life, wildlife, and the natural environment over man's needs and still substantial dependency on petroleum fossil fuels? Platform Holly in 2017 was announced to be decommissioned, but 19 more still remain on a daily basis. Off the coast of California, as the debate in Washington between environmentalists and the oil industry and their special favorite political parties debate whether or not states have the power to ban offshore drilling, whether or not we need more fracking, whether or not we need an XL pipeline from Canada to bring more petroleum to the United States, whether we should export or import the stuff, whether we should have electronic vehicles, whether we should move more to liquid natural gas as a source of power generation. And the debate has yet to be resolved. What should we do about man's dependency on the black stuff?
Sabrina? Yeah, Sabrina's husband.